Hey, this is Nate Wells, and this is True Cove. Check out our podcast, that Go for Hockey podcast, for the latest news and updates on University of Minnesota hockey. You can find us on iTunes, and we're also on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
That's elite.
The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Giles and the Goalie Podcast, your Festivus edition of Giles and the Goalie Podcast. Once again, Ben, we find ourselves recording on Festivus, but this time we are not doing the call-in show.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to air the grievances ourselves.
That's probably fine, because last year's call-in show was basically just my wife making fun of me.
Well, did you watch the recap video from Saturday night? Because that's essentially what we had on my end.
I haven't yet. I just actually got home from a weekend with the in-laws, so I'll have to watch that as soon as we're done recording here and then make fun of you for it.
Yeah, it was just, my significant other just making fun of me. It opened with, you're disappointing, and then it ended with, that's what she said, and
oh, nice.
It was it had a little bit of everything. Ben, it is Christmas time. What Christmas foods do you most enjoy this time of year?
Well, it sounds a lot more pretentious and rich people than it really is, but we have a tradition at my dad's house every Christmas Eve of having surf and turf. So my dad will buy steaks and crab legs and some shrimp, and we basically just eat ourselves stupid on steak and seafood. Yeah, no, and trust me, we're not that rich. We just like to indulge on Christmas. So that's really kind of one that sticks out for me. Other than that, nothing really definitive. I do enjoy some of the stuff that comes with Christmas, the Reese's trees. What else?
Yes.
The chocolate covered cherries are usually pretty decent. So yeah, there's lots out there.
I mean, I was going for, smaller things, like you said, the Reese's trees. I'm a big fan of the chocolate covered cherries. The cookies with the Hershey's Kiss right in the middle. Those are high up there. No high first class surf and turf for me. Just some peasant like candy for me. But
you're eating gruel for dinner.
I also enjoy my crusty imitation brand eggnog.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So that's
the jagged metal crustio inside.
Yeah. I'm excited for this 4-day weekend that we're taking part in. It's good to have a couple extra drinking days.
Yeah. Yeah, I really I tied one on with my two brother-in-laws last night in my wife's hometown, and we got a little rowdy. We had a couple of beverages.
Well, that's what I'm about to do here after the show today. So
good for you.
Yeah, good thing I'm in a distant state so that I don't destroy any of Minnesota's precious land. Speaking of precious, the wins that the Minnesota Wild aren't getting sure are becoming more and more precious every single day.
Mm-hmm.
See that again? I'm just killing it with the transitions these days.
Absolutely killing it.
So to review the last week for the Minnesota Wild, they had, what was that, 1, 2, 3 games. After we recorded last week, Tuesday night, San Jose Sharks come to St. Paul and they win 4-0.
Yeah.
Then we'll go out to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they lose 2-1. And then the Wild lose 2-1 on Saturday night to the Dallas Stars. In overtime, the Wild get a point thanks to Jason Zucker scoring the tying goal with just 2 minutes left. And that's as bad of a week as you could have possibly drawn up.
Pretty much. We last week we kind of talked about the swoon being over. Or maybe the Wild were coming out of it. They had 2 big wins in the week previous, and
that was
they certainly made a priority of proving us wrong.
That was just the eye of the swoon we were in.
It was the eye of the swoon, exactly.
Yep. Just like in The Simpsons, when Homer thinks the hurricane is done, Lisa just assures him, "Dad, no, it's just the eye of the storm."
Mm-hmm.
We were just in the eye of the swoon. Yes. As it continued on. And now the Wild are not sitting very pretty in the standings, as they're 3 points out of a playoff spot as we record here the day before Christmas. And they are behind 2 teams before they were to be in the wild card race. So not good to pile up the teams that you have to jump, especially as we get this late in the season. And so are we again drifting in? It's time to be very concerned territory.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of defeatist and a little bit over it. But I don't know. I'm like, my attitude on it is kind of whatever. This is it. If we're looking if you look towards the future a little bit, you look back on this season, maybe 2 years, 3 years from now, you look at it as Paul Fenton's first year, him not making a lot of moves. I feel like kind of by design. I mean, I'm sure he's trying, but at the same time, he's probably wanted to get a good look at what he had. That's why he didn't make any moves this past summer. So it turns this season into kind of a transitional season. And I know nobody wants to hear that. And I know that that's just going to send all sorts of people that call into radio stations through the roof. But that's the reality of it, I think. Like, it's just, Paul Fenton is feeling this team out. He's seeing what he has. He's seeing what these players can do. And hopefully he adjusts accordingly. And so, whether they make the playoffs or not this season, I think we kind of can all agree that it's really not going to matter. I mean, even if they do sneak into the playoffs, what's going to happen? Well, last year's going to happen all over again. I mean, without Devin Dubnyk suddenly becoming Jake Allen version 2017, it's going to happen again. So I don't know. I'm not freaking out because it is what it is. Like it's not. It doesn't change anything for me. If they make the playoffs, wonderful. We get to watch a couple extra hockey games that are kind of embarrassing. If they don't make the playoffs, well, okay, fine. I mean, you can talk about them getting a better draft pick. I'm not really sure that matters all that much unless they win the lottery, literally. But fine. It's a transitional year. Paul Fenton has moves to make, and because this team kind of as is isn't going to do anything, especially before the arrival of Kirill Kaprizov.
So you're telling me you don't want to get into the playoffs just to watch the Wild get waxed in 5 games again?
No, I could really give a crap less. Like, we've seen that how many times? I mean, I'll bring up the joke again. This is Batman Forever. This is a subpar movie that we're watching for what, like the 5th or 6th season straight?
Well, now we're drifting into Batman and Robin.
It's getting to Batman and Robin levels this season. That's true. We've got the full-blown nipple suit and everything. So, but yeah, I don't care. I mean, where do you feel? Where do you sit on that? Do you want them to make the playoffs desperately? Do you want them to make a move in order to make the playoffs still?
Heavens no. Right. I'm sure, as you said, talk show radio hosts, want that desperation mover, as we're seeing here in the last week. They want, the Wild to just strip it down and
burn it down
and tank for high draft picks. Well, let me tell you, folks, that doesn't always work.
No.
You don't get lucky in your second year of burning it down like the Toronto Maple Leafs. You don't get, 4 first overall picks in 5 years like the Edmonton Oilers. The Arizona Coyotes burned it down like 5 years ago, and they're still not recovered. They've never recovered. The Buffalo Sabres finally have righted the ship after 7 years, and they tore it down many years ago. And tearing it down, there's no science to it. There's no guarantee that you're going to get the number 1 overall pick. There's no guarantee that you're going to get that once-in-a-generational talent that you want to build around. And our friend Tony from The Athletic now had a very good point the other night when he tweeted, if the Wild maybe need an offensive, very offensive-minded player, maybe instead of tearing it down, they should just go and try to acquire that offensive-minded player. Give up whatever assets you deem necessary, but if you feel like there's solid pieces there on this team, which there's no denying that, go get that gifted generational talent player, trade for them, do whatever you have to do, but don't burn it down just to try and get that talent. If there's a sure thing you can get out there, go get it. Don't burn it all down just to burn it all down just so you can hope that you draft that talent, because it doesn't always work.
Yeah, and I think people forget that, these draft picks that everyone wants to acquire and everyone wants to move up are a completely unproven commodity. Like it's not at all something that is a guarantee. Like, oh yeah, if they just, sell a bunch of stuff off right now, pick higher in the draft, they're going to get an Austin Matthews. They're going to get a Connor McDavid type. They're going to get a Jack Eichel. No, that's not the case at all. How many times have we seen that not happen? And so it's just, and conversely, on the flip side of it, I like Tony's point of going out and acquiring an offensive talent, but that's easier said than done too. So, they're kind of stuck, and they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. And so that's just kind of where they're at right now. Like they just, you don't want to kind of throw out the idea of treading water until Kaprizov gets here. But, that's kind of what they're doing, because a big move is going to be really tough to make. And burning it down, as you said, isn't a better option either. So they're really kind of stuck in no man's land. And that just kind of is the situation, like it or not.
They're stuck in the Ozzie Smith Memorial Mystery Zone. That's exactly where they are. That's what you can call the area that they're in. There's no science to this, and you said it's harder to acquire that talent, but sometimes I would say it's easier to get that than it is to just tear it all down.
Oh, absolutely. And I think they should certainly try.
And maybe there is a little more method to the tear it down and, build through the draft madness, because that was Paul Fenton's forte, was scouting and drafting. Yeah. And it'll be really fascinating to see how he handles this, or, as he put it so many times last summer, tweak this roster, because I think we're seeing the real Minnesota Wild come out. And so as we're at the holiday break, the Wild are, as we said, they're 3 points out of a playoff spot. Like at this point, are they a playoff team? Do you think this is a team that will right the ship and make the playoffs, or do they miss the playoffs, as I boldly predicted before the regular season started?
Well, as is right now, you kind of have to predict them out of the playoffs. Certainly things can change, and I'm not going to make any kind of definitive call they're going to miss the playoffs, but I think, and you wrote about it this week, the absence of Matt Dumba for an extended period of time is really going to hurt this team. I mean, we've seen this team basically this entire week really struggle with not being able to score. They scored 2 goals in 3 games this week. And, there's no coincidence that's after losing Matt Dumba. So it's just, to me, it's really easy to predict them to miss the playoffs right now. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. I think there's still enough talent on this team to where they can turn it around, even without Matt Dumba for a little stretch here. But as it sits right now, no, they're not a playoff team. They haven't shown enough ability to score. And now they're missing their best, one of their best goal scorers, the best defensive goal scorer in the NHL, for that matter. And so, yeah, it's probably, probably safe to say they won't make the playoffs unless something drastic changes.
And you mentioned Matt Dumba. He was revealed he will be out for an extended period of time, as this week Paul Fenton and Bruce Boudreau announced that he would be undergoing surgery on his upper body injury. We still have no idea what the hell the injury is, but the surgery will keep him out, months, as Russo reported, and it could even put his season in jeopardy. So that kind of speaks to the seriousness of his injury, and that, it wasn't like the Wild were playing, top level hockey when Matt Dumba was in the lineup. But
sure,
as I tried to drive the point across on zone coverage this last week, he is a significant part of their offense and a very significant part of their power play that has now gone very absent since he has been off the ice.
Yeah.
And I even called that out in the game recap on Saturday night after the game, that FSN put up a graphic before Saturday's game against Dallas that the Wild power play was 30.4% in the month of December. But they had not scored a power play goal in, I believe it was 8 attempts since Matt Dumba left. So that speaks to how good the power play was doing with Matt Dumba.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, he was a huge part of that. And he, the most unfortunate part is that he was really coming into his own as far as scoring goes. We had seen him score goals before, sure. But, I mean, he had 11 goals in roughly a quarter of a season, a little more than a quarter of the season.
12
like
goals.
that, or 12 goals. Yeah, you're right. And it's just like that's for a defenseman, that's crazy. And he could have, maybe he could have had one of those seasons where he carries the load scoring to the point where, the Wild survive without a whole lot of scoring up front. Kind of the Erik Karlsson effect, him with the Senators, where, a good defensive scorer or a good defenseman scorer kind of cures a lot of ills that you might have up front and maybe fills some gaps.
When I pointed this out in that article, which you again can read at zonecoverage.com, hint, hint, but he was scoring goals on a pretty, elite level this season, and his .38 goals per game average this year, if you take defensemen in the last 20 years of the NHL and you sort by defensemen who average .35 goals per game or more with a minimum of, whatever Dumba's game played was this year. I think it was like 30 or something. Only 4 defensemen in the last 20 years have hit that mark. It was Sergei Gonchar in 99, Mike Green in 2009, Brent Burns of 2017, and then Matt Dumba of this year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We we discussed Matt Dumba's injury and the silliness around his injury ad nauseum last week. So if you kind of want our thoughts on that code and junk, you should listen to last week's show. You can check out my other written work at zonecoverage.com on how I feel about that code. But not good news for the Wild defenseman that was seemingly going to be taking a run at some record books this season, at least on the team level.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that, it's not a concussion, so it may or may not have come from the fight that he had against Calgary. And if it's, like a shoulder injury, like a lot of people are kind of suspecting, maybe it happened during that fight with Matt Tkachuk. Maybe it didn't. We don't really know, and I'm not really positive that we'll know for quite some time, to be honest. So it kind of further murkies the situation, unfortunately. As much as we want to kind of point to those gosh darn Flames and their goonery. There's just so much gray area surrounding that injury right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, those disrespectful Flames. All right, so Ben, it is Festivus, so we are going to air some grievances on the Giles and the Goalie podcast to get us in the spirit of Festivus. So I will let you have the first airing of grievances. What do you got?
Well, mine's kind of in general. I'm just, I went to a game early this year, and I know I've beat this drum for a long time. But the game experience at Wild Games is just awful, and the team is partly to blame. And the fans are partly to blame, as much as it doesn't pain me to say it, because there's a lot of fans out there that are idiots, but there's a lot of great fans out there too, and I don't want to take away from that. I don't want to crap on Wild fans as if like the collective of them is a bunch of slobbering goons, but there's so many of them at games that are so outwardly vocal and idiotic, and then the team just absolutely gives the sloppy BJ to them and tells them how great they are and how much they know about the game of hockey. Yeah, it's so revolting. And so, yeah, my grievance is I can't even enjoy a hockey game. Like I can't, I'm going to a Gopher hockey game this Saturday, and I'm very much looking forward to a game where people know their hockey, but they don't feel the need to tell everybody about it, and the team doesn't feel the need to pat them on the top of the head about it. I'm very much looking forward to that. I mean,
let's be honest, the team doesn't feel the need to pat everyone on the head about it because there's roughly 10 people there nowadays.
Well, yeah, for the Gophers, yeah, that's true.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah, no, that's an absolute fair point. All 12 of you, you're doing great.
Your first airing of grievances was so on brand for you.
Oh God, yeah, I know. That's why I almost didn't want to do it, because it was so redundant for me.
I mean, I figured since we had just talked about the Flames, you were going to, touch on the Flames. So I'm actually gonna. My first airing of grievance is going to be with the Calgary Flames and your crap code that you seemingly had to adhere to. That cost the Wild now their best player this season. I think you're disrespectful. The Wild were in no way disrespectful, but you apparently felt they were. And you might be an otherwise fun team to watch, but your over-the-top physicality and goonery and buffoonery is sickening. So take that, Calgary Flames. And your fans are complete doorknobs.
Yeah, well.
There's a reason why the city of Calgary doesn't want to give you a new arena.
Yeah.
Okay, what else you got?
I don't know if we want to get into such a heavy argument this early in the show. But I'm going to air the grievance that I'm really tired of the whole Die Hard as a Christmas movie thing. And,
why? I'm watching it right now. It's a great Christmas movie.
Oh my God. I'm just, it's one of those things where it's just like people want to be edgy, and it's like, oh, I like, Die Hard is the best Christmas movie. It's like, well, you're just saying that to turn the screws to people a little bit. Like, I don't think that anybody who thinks that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, like, actually really genuinely believes that the writers of this movie, it was based on a book, or the writers of the book or the writers of the movie, whichever, sat down at a table and thought, I want to write a Christmas movie. And somehow they came up with a guy killing 12 terrorists in a skyscraper. Like, that's where it ends for me. It's like there was zero intent of making that movie a Christmas movie when it was written. And does Christmas fit into the plot nicely? Sure, it does, but it's not even that essential to the plot. And I'll argue that till the end of time. So it's become very fashionable to argue about that on Twitter this year. For some reason, it's become the hot button topic, and I'm kind of over it.
Huh. Well, there you go. You pulled that out right away early in the show here.
Yeah,
I guess
we're airing grievances, Giles. This is what happens.
Yeah. So, well, I guess I should expect that from you as well. But I'm going to keep it hockey themed here with my second airing of grievances. My second one is Joel Eriksson-Ek.
Whoa.
Just absolutely lost when it comes to offense this season. He has just 7-8 points. It is ridiculous. He was a healthy scratch Saturday night.
Oof.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 4 points. I was being too generous with my 7 or 8. He has 4 points this year, and Bruce Boudreau has already healthy scratched him earlier in the year, and he called him out. He said, he is very good defensively, and he just needs to be a little more offensive-minded. And he has not answered that call at all. He had that very good game after he came back from the healthy scratch. Mm-hmm. But he really, ever since, has not been offensive-minded whatsoever, and now it's just time to stick him in Iowa while you still can put him through without waivers and let him get some kind of offensive pizzazz to his game to hopefully get him back on track, because he in some way, shape, or form is going to factor into the future of the Wild if they want to maintain their playoff run here in the next couple of years. Because if he doesn't really pan out, then that's a crucial blow to this team that's really lacking in youth. And then it is also further, twisting the knife in everyone in the state of Minnesota on the fact that Chuck Fletcher and Brent Flair took Joel Eriksson-Ek over Brock freaking Besser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one still stings. And as I sit in my Burnsville home, it really kind of does. It twists the knife, quite a bit, because that was the first year we started covering the draft for Wild Extra, and the first year I covered the draft, I should say. I'm sure you had kind of covered it previously, but and I remember, the kind of gamble that Besser was. I mean, he was kind of an electrifying player a little bit, maybe a guy who had a lot of talent, but you weren't really sure if he was going to put it together or not. And then there was Joel Eriksson-Ek, who was the consummate Scandinavian 200-foot player. And I guess that'll segue into my grievance, kind of just to kind of, tag along onto yours. When are NHL teams going to figure out how to draft? Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that talent is talent. And the ability to play defense in the NHL is wonderful. Don't get me wrong. I'm certainly not poo-pooing good defensive players.
It's teachable.
Exactly.
That's
that's just it.
That's why, not to cut you off mid-sentence, but that's why Ken Hitchcock continues to be employed, is because defense is incredibly more teachable in this league. Yes,
it is. And offense, conversely, isn't. And that's just it. And so I saw a tweet from somebody a long time ago, and I forget who they were. And, I think it was I don't know exactly who it was. She might have been a writer for an SB Nation blog or something, but she said something to the effect of, NHL teams draft these high floor players in deference to these, high ceiling players, when really there's no evidence that their floors are any lower than, I think Besser and Eriksson Ek is a perfect example of that. The Wild took Eriksson Ek as a high floor player. Well, he's guaranteed to play in the NHL. He's gonna at very worst, he's gonna be, a bottom six guy. And it's like, well, okay, but for every Eriksson Ek like that, you draft a guy like Besser, and I think you can say the same thing for him because he's so talented. Like, even if Brock Besser didn't put it together, even if he didn't, isn't able to, let's pretend that he turns out to be, 50 to 60% of what he is today. Well, then he's basically what? Like, I don't know, a third liner or a very offensive fourth liner. He's a guy like Jordan Schrader or probably a little better version of a Jordan Schrader. It's not a bad thing to have. And at this point, would you take Jordan Schrader or a little bit better version of Jordan Schrader over Joel Eriksson Ek and his 4 points? I think you would. Right. And that just makes, I hate to beat this poor kid to death, but it just makes the Philip Johansson pick look even worse. Because it's like you've got, we talked last week about Simon Johansson, who was picked in the 4th round and is, putting up points at a pretty decent clip over in Sweden. And this Philip Johansson kid who still, can't seem to find a way to put any puck. He still has 1 point, Giles. We celebrated that 1 point. He's still at 1 point.
1 point.
Yep.
You know who else has 1 point? Devin Dubnyk. You know who has more than 1 point? Alex Stalock. The bleeping goaltenders.
So, yeah, that's my grievance. Like, as much as I really did like the Wild draft this year from the 3rd round on, they didn't have a 2nd round pick, but the 3rd round picks, 4th round pick, I thought all of their draft picks were very good after that 1st round pick, but it's just like, I don't know what it is. It's just this old school, you gotta get good players to play defense and it's so dumb. I feel like it's so archaic. And in today's day and age, with all the analytics that are available to us and just the common sense and the trial and error of it all, you would think that we'd be past that. And I guess not.
When it's also just sensing the fact that the league is changing. The league is becoming more offensively dynamic. Right. And if you're just out there still trying to pluck defensive third line forwards in the 1st round of the draft, then maybe that speaks to how archaic your philosophy is at this point, because you need to evolve as the league evolves.
Mm-hmm. Another example, and again, the jury is still very much out. I don't think Luke Cunnin is a bust by any stretch, but drafted several positions after him was Alex DeBrincat. And Alex DeBrincat is having a nice little early career for himself with the Blackhawks. And right. I don't, and he was a guy going into that draft that a lot of people are like, well, he's small, but he's very talented offensively. And I'm not saying that Luke Cunnin isn't talented, but Luke Cunnin was a guy that are like, well, he's a good defender, great leader, yada, yada, yada. Maybe he does have some offensive talent, luckily, and he has, produced at other levels. But then you just completely pass over a guy like DeBrincat, who's got tons of talent, but just happens to be a smaller guy. And it's so silly to me.
Well, I've got good news. I think we're going to see a change in the draft philosophy next spring.
I would hope so.
I think. So I think we might have to not air out our grievances much longer on Wild draft picks.
Yeah, I would love that.
But this team does have a lush history of of decrepit first-round picks. All right. Do you have one last airing of grievance?
I just went. So, is it your turn?
Yeah, but I was trying to stall because I forgot what my last one was.
No, I can, I've definitely ranted about a lot of things on this podcast throughout this season. You know how much I don't like Vikings fans. You know how much I don't like Wild fans, for that matter. I already mentioned that. So I can be done with that. It just, there's you touched on the whole thing with Calgary and yeah. So I can probably be done now.
All right, my last airing of grievance is the fact that the Wild continued to just run. It's not a thing anymore, but when Devin Dubnyk was struggling hardcore, the Wild solution was to just run him out there, let him keep starting in net and figuring it out. And sure, decent strategy, I guess. But my problem is maybe if you had invested in a decent backup goaltender, you could afford to sit Dubnyk for a couple of games and let him maybe just, get his mind right on the bench or something. Let him figure it out that way instead of just continuing to run it out there. But the fact that they never go and get a decent backup goaltender, and they have to just continuously rely on Dubnyk going back out there night after night in the hopes that he's going to get the ship righted himself. So that's aggravating. And Alex Stalock has been decent this year to his credit, but he's not a guy you want to plug into the lineup for 2 or 3 games consecutively in hopes of, getting elite starts. So I think another point of emphasis for Paul Fenton in the offseason is to get a more stable and solid backup goaltender so that Devin Dubnyk doesn't have to start 65-plus games a year.
Right. Yeah, I think, I don't know why that's so hard. It seems like for some reason, as scarce as things can be in the NHL, good backup goaltending really isn't that scarce, and it's not that expensive, more importantly. Like there's pretty decent backup goaltenders who are, career backups, they're kind of journeymen, but they're only making $2 million a year, or
right.
Maybe not even that, and so I don't understand why it's,
I guess that's the price you have to pay when you're paying fourth liners $2.5 million per year. Yeah. All right. That was our airing of grievances. If you want to air some grievances on the Wild or hockey or even this otherwise fine podcast, air it out on Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast or our Facebook page, facebook.com/GATG Wild Podcast.
We have some grievances coming in from one T. Schreier.
Yeah, Tom has many grievances coming in, and especially if we don't get this show going and it creeps up over the hour mark. Tom will be airing a grievance with me tomorrow morning. So let's
Can't blame him after last week.
Yeah, well, we had Drew. We could just
we'll blame him.
Yeah,
we'll blame him.
So, all right, let's get this show rolling, and we move along to our Bruce Boudreau quote of the week.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before. If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more because that, they pay good money for this. If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
The Bruce Boudreau quote of the week comes before the Thursday game when the Wild played the Pittsburgh Penguins via Michael Russo of The Athletic, who tweeted out a photo of Bruce Boudreau and Penguins GM Jim Rutherford having a chat in the bowels of PPG Paints Arena prior to that game. And Russo tweeted this out as he said, best part of the morning was Boudreau telling Rutherford's young son that his first NHL goal was against his Pops, and Bruce Boudreau replied with, "He let it in," he said. And then Jim Rutherford chimed back, "Somebody must have tripped me." So there's your fun little Bruce Boudreau anecdote of the week. That was a nice little gem in an otherwise pretty bad week for the Wild. And as we kind of noted a few weeks previous, Boudreau kind of clamps up when the team gets into a rough patch. So that was fun to have that little quote there. So, all right, Ben, we will ever so quickly move right along to the Kirill Watch.
Yeah.
Kaprizov across for Gusev. Kaprizov shoots. He scores! He scores! The Russians are golden in South Korea.
Kirill Kaprizov was actually spotted at the KHL outdoor game on Saturday evening over in Russia, Saturday morning here in the United States. And I actually watched a little bit of it via a third party and in a very legal website.
Yes, of course.
But I tweeted out a photo of the advertisement behind the net as it was an advertisement for Durex, which I found, well, let's say I got a kick out of it, to be honest. So you don't see that often here in the United States. But anyway, Kaprizov did have a goal in that game for CSK Moscow, his 16th goal of the season, 26 points, 37 games for them this year. So that's your little, and it actually, to be fair, it wasn't an outdoor game. It was just a game played in a giant football stadium.
That's still an outdoor game.
But it was enclosed. It was like in a dome.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It didn't. The pictures look like it was pretty bright. I guess they just had it well lit.
I'm about to be well lit. I'm pretty sure it was a dome. I could be wrong.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough about Russian hockey, but anyway, it looked like it was in a dome. So
sure.
I don't know, it was like when the Canucks played their heritage game at the Dome in Vancouver them years ago with the white pants. So,
okay.
Ben, is there another prospect we want to highlight this week?
Sure. This is a guy that I haven't brought up yet this season. I'm trying to, highlight some guys that need to be highlighted, but
Philip Johansson.
His time has passed. But no, this is a guy playing in the NCAA right now, actually, playing for Providence College. His name is Brandon Duhaime, and he was a 4th-round pick in 2016 by the Wild. He's 21 now, and he's having a decent season in Providence. Last season, 26 points in 40 games. This season, 13 points in 16 games. So getting close to that point per game threshold, which in the NCAA is a pretty decent accomplishment. Ultimately, as I've talked about a few of these prospects, I don't know if this guy is a first line or second line kind of talent, but worth keeping an eye on. I mean, he's having a good year for Providence. He was only a 4th-round pick, so anything you get from him is kind of gravy. But he's been in Providence for 3 years, so he could really jump ship anytime. He might probably stay for that 4th year, I would assume. But certainly after the season ends next year for Providence, you can very well see him make a cameo with the Iowa Wild, and maybe he's someone who contributes in the future. But Brandon Duhaime, 4th-round pick from 2 summers ago, having a nice season for the Providence Friars, I believe, right? Friars.
Sure.
Yeah, let's go with that. Friars.
Oh. All right. There you go. All right, Ben. on to the Central Intelligence Report.
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, I've been scoreboard watching since opening night. So I don't know if that counts or anything, but I think hockey players are hockey players, and they want to see where they are, and they know how close everything is. They know that every game is vital.
And our Central Intelligence Report, as the Wild continue to slip their way down in the standings, the Winnipeg Jets have overtaken the Nashville Predators for first place in the Central Division.
Ooh.
They have won 8 out of their last 10. They are now, with 50 points, the top in the division and top in the conference, as they've overtaken the Calgary Flames for top in the conference. The Predators lost 3 in a row. They are down to 46 points, second in the division. Colorado Avalanche, who have lost 7 out of their last 10. Not shocking, considering they're just a one-line team. They're at 44 points. And they got waxed by Coyotes on Saturday night, 6-4. Whew. At least the Coyotes look good while they did that, too. We can be thankful for that.
Yes, sir.
Then the Dallas Stars, with their win over the Wild on Saturday night, kept their place in the standings, 4th in the division with 39 points. And the Minnesota Wild, 37 points, just 5th in the division now. They're 3 points out of a wild card spot as they trail the Edmonton Oilers. 2 points. They trail the Edmonton Oilers. Go figure. At St. Louis Blues in 6th, and Ben, they're only 5 points behind the Minnesota Wild. They're creeping very, very close to the Wild, which not sure we thought was possible.
Right.
And then there's the Chicago Blackhawks, also 32 points. But the Blackhawks have played 38 games just to the Blues 34 and the Wild's 35. So take that for what you will. So not good. But the Jets are just blowing everyone away. And the Wild actually come out of the break on next Thursday, I believe, in Chicago at the United Center. Then they go to Winnipeg on Saturday night. So back-to-back games in the division and very meaningful division points on the line for the Minnesota Wild. So that's that. Anything else you want to add to the intelligence briefing, or you just want to airmail that one?
Yeah, I'm not feeling very full of intelligence today.
Okay. That's fair.
Most days.
All right. Last but not least, on to jerseys.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Oh, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
And Ben, we do have a few minutes to discuss jerseys, as we're still under the hour mark, so Tom can't get too angry with us, but we'll keep our jersey segment a little shorter this year. But what is on the jersey docket for today?
Well, I opened things up a little bit. I had us just down to talk about Christmas and jerseys for Christmas, as many of us growing up, that was, you had your Christmas and you had your birthday, and those were the time of years to rake into your collection, to rake into some new jerseys. So I guess I'll start off by asking, did you ever receive any jerseys as a Christmas present, and what was your favorite?
Absolutely. If my parents could tell you every year a jersey highlighted the top of my Christmas list.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe most years my parents were kind enough to oblige in that request. But sorry, I just had a cat jump on and turn on the audio to the Whalers game that I'm watching. So all of a sudden I got the Star Spangled Banner playing, so I got really confused. But no, every year a jersey has highlighted the top of my Christmas list, and I was fortunate be obliged in those requests for most years. And I always like to point out that the first year that I had requested a jersey was the Mighty Ducks, and that came in around when I was 4 or 5. So Mighty Ducks was jersey number 1, and I've built a lovely collection ever since. So
yeah. Awesome.
What about you? Were you ever fortunate to get a good jersey on Christmas?
You know what? Now that I think back to it, it sounds kind of screwed up and sad, but I don't think I ever did. I know for a fact I got a few jerseys for my birthday. The Flyers jersey I had was a gift from some friends. The Marc-Andre Fleury jersey I had was from my mom. The original Wild jersey I got from my aunt or aunts, twin aunts, on my birthday. But I don't know that I ever got a jersey for Christmas. I'm trying to think back of all the jerseys that I acquired throughout the years, and maybe the Florida Panthers jersey that I originally had as a kid was a Christmas present. That very well could have been it. I think that might have been the original red, the John Van Beesbroek era jerseys. I had one, because it was 1996 and everyone had one. I believe that may have been a Christmas present from my grandma or my mom. I'm not positive. So, but that might have been it. I've been on quite the Christmas jersey dry spell since then.
Yeah, last year I got the Gordon Bombay Waves jersey for Christmas. It hasn't always been a hockey jerseys. Like, for years, like I would have asked for, a Kevin Garnett jersey when the Wolves were big, and
sure.
I was a big Kurt Warner guy back when, so I got a Kurt Warner jersey for Christmas when he was on the Rams, and so there was no rhyme or reason to my jersey request. It was just always a player or a team I loved. So like I said, I was fortunate that more years than none.
Yeah,
my requests were obliged, but sometimes my requests could be a little egregious, so I'd have to dial it back.
So speaking of a jersey that I would love for Christmas and a team that you just mentioned, a defunct team, today we are seeing the Hartford Whalers reincarnated again via the Carolina Hurricanes. What are your thoughts on that?
I didn't really think of it like this until I was listening to the Puck Soup podcast on Friday, where I believe it was Down Goes Brown pointed out that there's, quite a few fans among the Hurricane fan base that didn't really want to see this. Sure. And, obviously this is a huge kind of a twist of the knife to Hartford fans.
Absolutely.
And then you kind of turn it around and you think, man, if, the Dallas Stars did something like this, it'd be so incensed.
Yeah.
And, so I guess I never really thought of it like that. So I have, a little bit more, kind of sympathy for those fans as, maybe there's something, maybe going on where, the Hurricanes are kind of looking at different options with their new owner, who's kind of an outside the box kind of a thinker. But
sure,
from a jersey aspect, yeah, this is quite lovely on the eyes as I'm watching this game here right now, as the Whalers are just, it's a great jersey, and we love to fawn over it time and time again on this podcast. And it's not the blue one that Drew brought up last week. It's the original green. So sure. I'm a big fan of the jerseys, but I do have some sympathy for the Hartford fans who are having that salt rubbed in the wound here.
Yeah, I feel kind of the exact same way about it. Selfishly, it's really cool to see those jerseys out and about again. The But yeah, I think there's a fair amount to be said for just kind of letting something die, and
right.
The twist the knife factor is probably the worst part. If it was entirely 100% up to me, that twist the knife factor, for Connecticut hockey fans would probably be the deciding factor in me not doing something like this. Certainly selling old Hartford Whaler jerseys, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the team wearing them on ice, I don't know how necessary that is. Like I said, there's probably good intentions there. There's probably a fair amount of cash grab intended there too. Let's be honest.
That's a huge cash grab thing.
Right. Sure. And that's fine. And if it's, that's how capitalism works, for Christ's sake. I mean, you sell things that people want. So, but I don't know. Yeah. I think I made the point, and I believe Nate Wells made the point at the same time when this was announced earlier this year. Nate and I both had that exact same point that you just talked about, that Down Goes Brown had last week, is that, I mean, if this happened with the North Stars, could you imagine? Could you imagine? I mean, that and also layered on top of that too, this state got a team. Hartford never got a team again.
No.
So, I mean, for the North Stars, or for the Stars to wear North Star jerseys, would be absolute blasphemy and really, I mean, straight up offensive to a lot of people. And we have a team. We have another franchise. And then that didn't happen for Connecticut. That didn't happen for those Whalers fans. So, man, I just like that. It's really kind of a kick in the balls. Like, maybe some of them are feeling some solace in seeing that team again. And maybe it's a very nice, nostalgic day for them. But there's got to be a lot of sadness layered in there too. So I don't know, man. I mean, it is what it is, and nobody's going to stop it, and they're certainly going to make a lot of money off of it, so that's reason enough for them to do it. But yeah, like you said, it's really a gut punch.
I didn't know this until Down Goes Brown also brought this up, but kind of an eye-opening thing, or kind of one that maybe raises the eyebrows here, is the Hurricanes are wearing the Whalers jerseys to a game in Boston later this year.
Yep.
Not a home game.
Yep. No, I know that.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Yeah. And so that was one thing where it's like, well, I mean, maybe that's a good opportunity for a lot of old Whaler fans to go watch a game. And again, maybe it's a fun day of nostalgia for them, but I feel like it would be a lot like when they played the alumni game here, and you basically had the North Stars out there, with a handful of Wild folks, but mostly the North Stars out there.
The North Stars with Wes Walz.
Yeah, the North Stars featuring Wes Walz and, I think Brian Ralston or
Andrew Burnett.
Andrew Burnett was out there. So, I mean, it was fun, and it was, it kind of brought a tear to a lot of eyes, but it also brought up a lot of pain too. Like, that team left town, and that team meant a lot to a lot of people. And, so yeah, there's a lot of mixed emotions with that. As much as I love seeing those jerseys on the ice and that beautiful logo back in play again, it's really, really kind of kind of mean too.
Russo put it out there Saturday night for the game against Dallas that was the 4,000th game in the history of the Dallas Stars, and it was like just over 2,000 in Minnesota, and then just right under 2,000 in Dallas. So they're coming up on that mark. And it took me a while to come up with the correct response to that tweet, because a lot of them had full of snark. So I didn't want to necessarily direct that at him, because if you send him snark and you catch him at the wrong moment, well, then you're on his bad list. So I don't want to be on his bad list. But,
you're on the naughty list.
Yeah. So I just replied with the great YouTube video where it's just 5.5 minutes of North Stars fans outside Met Center saying Norm sucks.
Yeah.
That timeless classic.
Yeah. It just, and maybe there's a silver lining to it for Minnesota sports fans. The North Stars leaving, you could say in a way did save the Vikings and the Twins, because they did end up getting their own stadiums after, essentially pulling teeth for 2 decades, but they did end up getting their own stadiums. and maybe if the North Stars don't leave, that process is a lot harder, and there's a lot less of an argument. People are a lot less afraid of a team picking up and moving from a traditional market like this. So, if you want to look at the positives, I'm not going to, necessarily look at it that way. But if you're a big Vikings and Twins fan, you can certainly look at it that way.
If Norm Green hadn't been so adamant about the soda ads on the boards as to what was already being advertised at Target Center, the North Stars would have probably stayed here.
Yeah. It was a kind of a perfect storm of the times and the situation and not kind of calling the owner's bluff on moving the team, and he did. So it kind of goes to show, if you want to keep a team in your market, you can't really call the owner's bluff, because they will move the team.
Right. Nope. They will, as best exemplified by the National Football League. So,
right.
There you go. All right. I think we've gone on enough, and we're about to hit the hour mark, so we better clear out before Tom's got a grievance for me tomorrow. So yeah, that will wrap it up for this Festivus episode of the Giles and the Goalie podcast. Certainly want to wish everyone out there a very fun and safe Christmas. We'll be back next week for our final show of 2018. Hard to believe we're here already, but we'll be back next week. Follow Ben on Twitter at Ben Remington. You can find me on Twitter at Giles Farrell. As I mentioned before, podcast Twitter is at GATG Wild Podcast, and you can find us on YouTube. Search Giles and the Goalie. And you can find this otherwise fine show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeartRadio, again on YouTube, Stitcher, Google Play. Yeah, it's everywhere. And then also we write for a website called Zone Coverage, zonecoverage.com. You can go to zonecoverage.com/wild specifically. If you wish to subscribe, you can still use the promo code GATG20 for just a last-minute Christmas gift and give a year's subscription to Zone Coverage for just $20. So one last chance to get your stocking stuffer for this Christmas. So there you go. So for Ben, I am Giles. Thank you for everyone for listening, and we will catch you again next week.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.